Hey folks, Phil Davis, Ancestry Lands, ancestrylands.com. Hope everybody's doing well. Today, folks, as you drive home with me, we're leaving the illustrious city of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, for those who do not know, right over by the, as you can see here in the top there on that one, Drexel University. Shout out to the Drexel University people. Make sure, folks, you always go to ancestrylands.com for where the properties we have are located. Seems like spring is coming early. You can always follow, like, share, subscribe too as well. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about a myriad of topics. One being something called special assessments, or an assessment, a tax assessment that happens. So many of you may or may not know, and I apologize for the glare, but we're just getting some glare from this building up here from the angulation of the sun. We're going to get that fixed in just a second. A special assessment or a tax assessment. Whenever a piece of real estate, this goes for houses too, because everybody seems to think that there is some special difference between land and homes, as if homes are not built on land or were not part of vacant land at one point in time. And this is a special shout out to a nurse named Mia. She knows who she is. Shout out to you, Mia, because she brought this to my attention when she asked a question to me at the clinic where I work at. And she asked me about, why do property taxes go up so much in 1 year? So the reason why property taxes go up, and that's on everything from commercial buildings to vacant properties, vacant land, a home, any kind of home, any kind of commercial building. There's two reasons or ways that happens. One way that happens, and this all is dependent on the county. And Jesus, just walk right out in the middle of the street. Okay, you see what's going on here? This guy just parked, and this is the thing I love about the city, folks. In the city, it's a very street here. This guy's got his car parked, double parked, to go to the post office. He's gonna drop his girl off and kiss her, and just congest the largest amount, afternoon traffic and everything. Make sure somebody doesn't drive crazy over here. He's gonna congest everything just because he wants to, say what's up to his honey. So everyone else has got to die and be inconvenienced just because he's got a love thing, But salute to him for walking her across the street. I ain't gonna be mad and hate on him for that. So back to what I was saying is that anytime that a piece of real estate is sold, depending on the county, depending on the state, for all those real estate gurus out there who's going to say, that he don't know what he's talking about, and this only happens in my state, my level. Every county is different. Every state is different. You might have heard many of the articles in the news talking about homeowners' property taxes going up 500 or so %. You could just get ahead of me, guy. You don't have to. He could have went right in front of me. I would have given him the go ahead. When property owners in like Ohio, they are experiencing their property taxes go up about 500%. Where once they were paying, maybe a couple thousand a year, the property taxes are now going up to, several thousand, where, they might be paying upwards into, $1,000 or $2,000 a month. So one thing you have to be aware of is that when you're looking on Zillow, or any of the real estate websites that are, where you look to buy a piece of real estate or a home, many times when you're buying, let's just use home for the sake of, just simple math. Hopefully I'll make this without messing up my truck. Tally-ho! We made it. Whenever you buy a piece of real estate, you will incur, the new price or purchase will incur a tax assessment. All right, a tax assessment is done. Every home or residential, even vacant property, is governed, and this is in my book, Getting Dollars from Dirt: A Beginner's Guide to Vacant Land Investing by Philip Davis. This is in my book. I cover this. whenever you buy a piece of real estate, home or a house or land or whatever else, you will incur a tax assessment. The counties, any county that you live in, they are the governing body for any piece of real estate, whether it's a house or a vacant lot. The county is fed their money to operate and run the county by property taxes, sales tax, and all other forms of taxation placed and levied on municipalities. Everything you can think about, your cable bill, your cell phone bill. There's all these little taxes that we pay in all of our bills that the county is generating income from. And as an owner of land or real estate, you're going to be assessed property taxes. All right? That's how the county is going to make their money. And the county is in the business of making the government money. So if you look at the real estate market that we have right now, where a home that was purchased, maybe let's say back in 1990 or 30 years ago, before the pandemic or plandemic, depending on wherever you are, stand on that judgment, the property purchased at that time, let's say for a house, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, whatever, $200,000. All right. Whenever that property was sold back then, this is a house. Many counties, it would create a tax assessment. Just like when you have health insurance and you have a birth of a child, you're now allowed to add that child to your health insurance. It's very similar in the metaphor that I'm using now, how a tax assessment operates. The county says there was a bill of sale on this property. We're going to go out and look at the market price and the prices of other homes sold in that area, and we're going to assess a tax assessment based upon not the market value, but the county's assessed value of the property, which always comes in lower than the market value of the property. The market value of a property is what the property is being sold over from owner to owner, which is typically always higher than the tax assessed value that you're paying property taxes on. So if a property is sold for $200,000, the tax assessment value may be $110,000. That doesn't mean that the property is not worth that. That is the maximum amount, and they have a table for it in most counties that they're allowed to go up on, depending on certain metrics that they use. Every county is different on how to assess a property. Okay. Now, again, I'm driving home, so I don't have all the information in front of me. So a lot of this, I'm talking from my base knowledge of tax assessments, and there's many different kinds. So when they do that, that now creates a new value for the property to be assessed at. If you go into Zillow, which a lot of people are making this mistakes on, they're looking at a mortgage that's included. A lot of times the mortgage is depending on how much you put down, and it's giving you an average mortgage based off how much you put down, what your interest rate will be, and how much, and that's when you put down a down payment, pretty much how much you're financing. So if you have a house, $500,000, you put down 20%, right? So that is $100,000 that you're putting down. You're now financing or creating a loan for $400,000. And depending on what interest rate you have, that's going to dictate a portion of your monthly payment. The other component is if you have something called primary mortgage insurance. If you do not put the 20% down, you may have to pay extra on something called a PMI, primary mortgage insurance, which may or may not come off depending on what type of loan you have when you have a certain amount of equity into the home. All right, so we're going to just cover that base real quickly for all the people who need some level of education in real estate. And there's nothing wrong with learning this little bit, okay? So the other component of it is that the estimated property taxes that you'll have to pay. All right, and that's just based upon kind of just initially the sale of the property on Zillow. All right. What you don't realize is that after the sale happens, depending on which county you live in, you may get something called a special tax assessment, where they go down to the house because the house may have had updates, may have had improvements in the form of updated kitchen or added bedrooms. You do not know as a new buyer what the property was bought, the dimensions of the property, whether they've done any rehab, if they've added any bedrooms, or if it's got a new appraisal. They might sometimes assign a special tax assessment. When they do this, a lot of times your property values can jump up significantly. And when I say property values, I mean as far as the tax assessment value from the county. So your initial estimated mortgage payment based upon, whatever property taxes that were at that time may be far lower than what you're going to be assessed with now. And that is what's happening in states like Ohio, where owners are seeing their property tax assessments go up 500 or so percent. And that reason is because they have these special assessments or regular tax assessments. And it's something that is missing from the home buyer education that people are experiencing now, because most of the times realtors or parents or anyone else will not give you this education, even though they particularly know that this is going to happen. You're supposed to be responsible for knowing this stuff. That's how it always happens, folks. But no worries, Phil Davis is here. Uncle Phil's always here to give you that old school gems. And the problem is, you got a lot of people out here, they're not following the information. You're just looking at the house. So now, again, we focus on the global. We don't focus on the details. We got the idea. The idea is buying a home, but we're not focused on the details. What details are in a mortgage? I'm here to always give you the details, folks. So in certain counties or certain states, like in Ohio, they have a 6-year interval at which they do tax assessments. And on those assessments, depending on when you bought your home, you can still have an increase in property value. And your tax assessment will be much higher. Now, the reason why you might ask why they do property tax assessment, the other side of it is that if you have a whole neighborhood, all right, let's say there are 30 homes in a neighborhood, okay? In this neighborhood, 30 or 20 of the homes were bought in 1990. These are old, your grandparents or your parents still living in the same home, and everyone's bought their homes for $200,000, all right? The last 10 homes are being sold. They're newer homes, been updated, or they're on the market now, being sold at today's market. This inflated, $600,000-$700,000. There's been very little rehab or some rehab done to these properties, all right? So the market now has driven up and properties are being sold for more than what they're worth. So, I mean, again, you now have a property that is now valued at, well, it used to be $200,000, now it's valued at $800,000, which means that there's so much more room now. If you're making a profit, why shouldn't the government, right? I mean, we live in a capitalistic society and country where there's no way you're going to buy and sell your home bought it for $200. Now the market's great. You're going to sell for $800. And the county's going to say, well, the money only is going to reside in the seller. Well, guess what? You as a buyer will now have to inherit the increase in market value, which relates to a portion of that falling onto the new assessed value, because now, based upon the sale or the price of the home that's being sold, the new buyer has the lovely gift of inheriting a property now that is valued more, which allows the county to assess the property at a higher value from either improvements or markets. Every county is very cloak and dagger on how they actually assess properties. But again, if you have a property that was assessed at $200,000, that has a tax assessment of $110,000, and then 20 or 30 years later, the property sold for $800,000. Well, the county's going to be able to get more tax money out of there. They're going to be able to pull more money out, and that's what's happening to these property owners. And they're saying, well, now my property tax has gone up 500%, and I've got to pay, where I was paying $5,000 before, I've got to pay, $20,000 now a year in property taxes. That's because of the price that everyone's bought these homes for. In Ohio, they allow for a 6-year interval. We just found out, because the nurse me and I were going through this earlier, that in Philadelphia, they do a 9-year assessment. Last one was in 2014. Other ones are in 2023. So how do you combat this or find out relatively what your tax assessment may or may not be? Well, there's a good way we looked on it. The first thing you got to figure out is that you got to look through the sales history of the property. You scroll down on Zillow, you scroll far enough, it's probably going to be somewhere in the thing called the details again. Past sales data and tax assessment data. You need to look at both these numbers, all right? And it'll tell you if a property's been sold within the last few years. So a lot of times you'll look back and see the property probably in the last 20 or 30 years. More than likely, most residential properties, and I'm going to just highlight on residential, single family residential, not multifamily or anything else, because multifamily, the numbers can be conflated a little bit. A lot of times that's based on how many doors they have. There's all these different other factors that go into why the valuation for a multifamily property is going to be much different than a single family residence. So we'll just concentrate on single family residence for right now. So all the people that are going out there, before you buy a home, this is something you should at least have an education with. And I hope this video is the way you're getting this education. When you go into the sales history, it has a section down at 0. It's usually collapsed. It has a little arrow to the far right. You got to open it because they know most people ain't going to see it, or people who are looking for it, they might miss it. They don't want you to see that data, which is why I'm pointing that out to you. You need to go look at that. You need to go look at the tax assessments. One thing that'll help you out is if you see a home that's been on the market and the price, like it might have been on the market for the last 2 years. And what they did was start at a very high number, and the price has just been dropping down. They're doing price adjustment after price adjustments. We looked at one property, and this was just, me explaining the same thing I have in this video. I was able to show her this in a matter of maybe 10 minutes and really get her to understand before she buys what to be prepared for, or at least arm yourself with knowledge in preparation that you are adjusting your finances for the increased tax assessment that will eventually come. It happens on every property, okay? So when you go back and look at the sales history, if you see a sale within the last 2 years, like we did, we saw a sale for one property. The property had an owner in like 1990. They ended up selling it for a low amount. And then maybe like 100,000, 200,000. I mean, yeah, go figure. In 2016, and the next thing you know, the property was put back on the market in less than 2 years. More than likely, that property's been rehabbed. Okay, so what you can see if you look at through Zillow, depending on the county, depending on the area, you will be able to see a cycle of when a tax assessment happens. It'll look on the bar, you'll see the property taxes per year on the left side, and on the right side of Zillow, you're going to see a tax assessment. It'll be a little line that says tax assessment, and it's going to give you a value. It should be somewhat in the hundreds of thousands if it's a single family home, brick and mortar. With land, it might be a little bit less because it's hard to kind of do a tax assessment on land. And the reason being is that land doesn't have any structures or any improvements on it. And like we said earlier in the video, improvements are bedrooms, any kind of thing. If you take a piece of land and put a foundation on it, you now have improved the land, resulting in a tax assessment happening. All right, because the land with the foundation has more value than the land with no foundation. And the reason being is that permits have been pulled and generated, construction has been done. There's more value being added to the price of that land because it's not just dirt anymore. This is why my book is called Getting Dollars from Dirt. So adding bathrooms and renovating, or adding an updated kitchen, adding another bathroom, another bedroom. These are ways to increase the value of a home, and it's also ways to generate more tax assessment, a tax assessment in a higher amount for the county. That's why they want you to do this stuff, because it helps the county's bottom dollar. It is not because of greed. It's just how you think about it. You don't want people paying a low tax amount for $1 million home in a house that is worth more. The county has to do, if you look at my book, Getting Dollars from Dirt, it talks about the infrastructure that's put in place when a person owns a home. All right, you got all the construction that's laid down, all the utility companies, which the county does oversee. the public utility companies in the form of water, sewer, and everywhere else, they've got to service those homes. As you add another bathroom to a home, you now add another line of plumbing and toileting that the water needs to be brought to that particular bedroom or bathroom, high or low, you know, in the property. So the county has to use more resources and more water that they're not going to be able to collect taxable income from the utilization of that public utility, which is owned by the county. So it is somewhat fair that this happens. And if you have a larger home, larger homes, more than likely, you know, have larger families, and then you have larger utility usage. You know, a larger home requires more heat, requires more gas in the form of natural gas, or more electricity in the form of wiring that again has to be provided to the home coming from the county owned or county maintained line right out in the street. So, and again, even your local cities, they pay up taxes to the county. Even though you have city taxes, you do have sometimes, like Philadelphia has city tax, but there is Philadelphia County's tax too as well. And again, these are just layers upon layers of how the government taxes us to death and gets more money out of the citizen on already taxed dollars. So again, if you go down to Zillow, and I may have to do another video on this where I can add in little, you know, add-ons to the screen to show you. But if you go down to Zillow and you follow what I'm saying, you scroll down past the details and facts about it, you can also see when the home was actually built. You know, these older homes need a lot of upgrades and a lot of modernization done to them. So you'll see a lot of times this home's been turned around in 2 years. They've done some level of rehabbing. Now, it could be great rehab or little rehab, but you got to understand that you're dealing with the house that's a flip now. All right, bought in 2016 from an owner who had it for 30 years ago, and now it's being sold in less than 2 years. Well, that's the time that the person probably came in, took a primary mortgage because they didn't want to take it as a investment property, because when you take it as an investment property, you're going to pay a higher interest rate. And also, when you get a lower interest rate when you actually live in a property for, I believe, up to a year or two. So there's many ways around this, and I'm not all about that scamming stuff, but know the rules of the land on what you're buying. And you do that by identifying these details that I'm pointing out in the Zillow pricing history. So pictures can lie, you can see all the things in the world, but numbers do not lie. When you look at that pricing history, you'll see when the last time that property sold, or if they've had problems selling that property. So you'll see the tax assessment come along, and in Philadelphia County, or the city of Philadelphia, which is where I work at, you'll see it in Drexel, the property taxes are done every 9 years, 2014 to 2023. So last time the property tax assessment came. So you bought a house that was bought in 1990, all right, and you're the first owner, and you bought it in 2015. Well, you got it for a good price. Your tax assessment is not due for another 8 years, 2023, the year that just passed. So you're going along paying this property taxes because this is your retirement home. Got it at a good price, although the market's gone up. Well, 2023 comes around, you get a special tax assessment. Now you gain all this equity into the home because of the housing market, but you also now have to pay, and what we've seen is something as much as $50,000 in a tax assessment can equate to $1,000 extra in a property in property taxes in just the course of 1 year. And we looked through multiple properties to see this happen. And it's amazing to see how much that number is. We looked at one property, I think it's Delmar Street in Philadelphia. This property was bought for, I think, $200,000 like some odd years ago, now being sold for $702. Right? This doesn't matter if the property actually was sold or not in Philadelphia. The assessment comes around, and that's it. The property's still been sold for, I think it's the last year or so. And I'll put it up in a later video when I try to redo and edit and see if I get that property up there. But you'll see the property was bought a few years ago, or sold a few years ago. Had one owner. They came in. You can see they went in, bought it a few years ago. Rehabbed, the whole place looks different. It's all modern. And now they're selling it for $702. They can't sell it, or is having trouble selling it, stuck on the market for a while, and the tax assessment is It went from, I think, like maybe $1,200 all the way up to almost $10,000 per year now in property taxes. And when the nurse, Mia, and she looked at that, she says, wow. And I said, yeah, again, now, when you buy it now, all right, that's hoping that's only what they've assessed it at. That does not mean that the purchase of the property will not elicit a special assessment being done where the property taxes can actually go up for more. And you got to face it, the government's in here to make money, all right? It's taxation without representation. That's what they're taxing you on, all right? And she had a little bit more knowledge, and I said, well, that doesn't mean you can't buy a house, but this is one of the things that I was never taught by people who are homeowners. They don't tell you about this. You're going in thinking that your mortgage that you got approved for is all there is. And then the county hits you with this special tax assessment, and now you're wondering, wow, hey, where's this extra money coming from now? And if you look at it, you'll see tons of news articles, ton of real estate videos talking about the same thing. Homeowners now are hit with these property tax bills, and this is where it's coming from, these special assessments or these tax assessments. So again, that's something you got to really think about, and you got to really understand when you're purchasing any kind of real estate in the form of a single family home, because these tax assessments, depending on what was done in the property, which you don't know, you're just buying it, your wife loves it, y'all are gonna make some babies, that's the fun part, not raising the kids, but making the babies is the fun part, especially if she really wants a lot of kids. You're gonna have a lot of fun there. But when you start dealing with the finances and you put the fun down for a minute, you're gonna be hit with this rude awakening. And the rude awakening is coming from the lack of understanding about these county assessments on properties. Now, where I will sell about the reason why I love owning land, and I'm sorry for the sun glare there, guys. I'm gonna try to get that out your way. Why I love about land is that if you buy a piece of property from me while land is still affordable, especially where I sell it at, the good thing about it is that when you buy a property from me, let's say you buy the property for, apologies again for the glare, that's gonna come off in a minute. When you buy a property from me, let's say you buy that property for, I don't know, $15,000 to $20,000. Well, because your good old boy, Uncle Phil, is working on your behalf, when a property in the areas, let's say a lot of the properties were selling for $5,000 5 years ago, when I am starting to sell properties for the amount that I'm selling them at, because we've got a good client base and they're a great value to people buying, and again, land follows a certain increase in the market just like any other piece of real estate does. This is going to be a little hard to see right here, guys. I got a truck in front of me. I'm trying to get over without killing anybody. I'll turn that right over there for you all. When you're buying this land, I am working on your behalf because my prices do not go down, okay? And when I say that, I mean that when you bought a property from me for 5 years ago, and that property was $5,000, and now the value or the average of the properties that I sell are now $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. That means all the properties that I own in that particular area, it's raising the values of all the properties adjacent to them. So what you have is this natural inflation based upon the demand of properties being bought. Look at this cop. He's about to pull somebody over. Look at this. About to see him go right past him. Look at this guy. I was about to pull somebody over. Woo. Nobody sees it because everybody's just sitting there dumbfounded, not pulling over for the cop. When you buy a property from Uncle Phil Davis at AncestryLands.com, we're selling the properties at a higher volume. The value of the properties is being increased, which means that what you bought a property for years ago, that same property, which you've had to do nothing, no improvements, you haven't had to add a bedroom or nothing to it. You didn't have to do any construction. See the cop coming up on my left? Yeah, he's about to go grab somebody. You haven't had to do any kind of constructions, no nothing. Because I'm still selling land in the same area in California City, your land values are going up constantly, because each bill of sale that's done, the county does a special assessment. In California, especially in Kern County, the actual tax assessments happen at the bill of sale, not at the annual or special assessments. So a lot of times your tax assessment can go up simply because the property's changing hands multiple times in a year. But also because I'm selling them for sometimes tens of thousands of dollars more than what I initially purchased them from, and what they were purchased from originally when I bought them. Your land values are all around and this is for every other property owner that I do or may not know that's in the California City area. They're seeing their actual land values go up because I'm actively in the area selling properties at a higher rate, and they've done nothing with these properties but sat on them. And that's one of the beautiful benefits of owning land, in the fact that they didn't have to do any kind of upgrading, no renovating. They didn't have to deal with tenants or toilets. It was their initial purchase price, and they just sat on the land. And yet, what ends up happening is they start seeing their properties can be sold for more, and they're saying, hey, maybe it's now time to sell. And don't forget, you only have about $100, $200 a year worth of taxes to pay for an unimproved land, which is vacant land. That's it. So they're not really, their cost to own the land is really just in the purchase, and it's a maintenance from there. You're talking about, if you're paying $100 a year, you're only paying about $1,200 in 12 years in property taxes for a piece of land that people like myself are working to drive the value up for. Myself and other land investors that may or may not be in the area. So you haven't had to do anything for your values of your land to go up. You haven't had to do anything you do with a house. There's no upgrading on dirt that you got to do unless you're growing something out of it. But even then, the dirt holds its value, and it's appreciating over time. This is what people talk about. Land always appreciates. Of course it always appreciates. You'll see one of the Villanova College students here. If you enjoyed my video, such as Coach Greg Adams, would love the college students here running because of the early spring in this area. So shout out to you, Coach Greg Adams. But again, the value of land would be going up over time because of the market, right? And every bill of sale makes the land values go up because you have the land being sold at higher values, thus creating a special tax assessment or a tax assessment in general, making the adjacent properties values go up. And that means that the owners of those properties who haven't sold now want to sell their properties for a piece of that market action. And they're saying that the properties once sold for $5,000 now range up to sell for about $15,000. Time to sell. Which those properties sell for $15,000. Now the equilibrium of what the average property being sold will raise up much higher from $5,000 to $10,000. And I've only been doing this business for about just under 5 years. That's how quickly it can change. Now you're thinking about taxes that you paid. You've only paid about $500 in taxes from your initial sell, and now you actually, let's say you did buy it for $5,000 5 years ago, because I did sell them for $5,000. I did. You bought that property. You only had $5,500. That's the purchase price plus the yearly $100 tax bills, and you're now $5,500 in. You're selling that property for $15,000. Well, that's just right now. You just created your own income there. It's your own investment. And you don't have to do anything. There's no sweat equity. You don't have to do anything else to fix it up. And all you did was made yourself just under 10 grand worth of money. Now, that's not for all cases, but it's a damn good example on why land is so important and why you should be in land. So again, folks, I hope you've been educated. I hope you've been enlightened. I hope you've been entertained. And I hope I brought some new knowledge to you folks, because, you know, a lot of this stuff, you see I'm driving, I'm doing this stuff from the top of my head. And this is because when I wrote my book, Getting Dollars from Dirt, I really wanted to put information that could be useful, information that my children, all three of them, could be proud of, that their father is trying to educate, entertain, and enlighten people. So folks, I'm Phil Davis. Go on Amazon, support your guy, man. Go buy some property, AncestryLands.com, or Ancestry Lands on all social media. You can find my book, Getting Dollars from Dirt, A Beginner's Guide to Vacant Land Investing by Philip Davis, your boy truly. You'll see my lovely picture on the back, and it's only 55 pages, folks, of just what you need to know no matter when you buy or where you buy in the United States. And it's going to still stand the testament of time. It'll never change because counties have been operating it like this from the beginning. Folks, if you don't own property, you'll be owned as property. Phil Davis, Ancestry Lands. I'm out. Peace.
Are you confused with today's real estate market? With high interest rates and overpriced housing, it can be hard to find something to own at the right price. Available on Amazon, Getting Dollars from Dirt by author Philip H. Davis is a game-changing book that invites you to embark on a thrilling exploration of this often overlooked asset class. This book is your roadmap to unlocking the secrets of vacant land investment. Inside these pages, you will uncover the transformative power of vacant land as a wealth-building tool. Discover how to spot promising properties, assess their true value, and capitalize on market trends. From understanding zoning and permits to leveraging financing strategies, you'll gain the knowledge and confidence to make savvy investment decisions. With each page you turn, you'll gain a deeper understanding of the profound impact your investments can have on the world around you. Getting Dollars from Dirt is not just a guidebook, it's a call to action. Whether you're a seasoned investor or a curious novice, this book will empower you to tap into the immense potential of vacant land and embark on a journey toward financial freedom and a brighter future.